Hi, everybody. It really is good to be here. And Robert, thank you so much for creating that foundation just in terms of perspective and the perspective that God has for our cities. That certainly was challenging, and the group discussion. One of the key elements as part of planning for today was that it would not just be another conference, but that it would be an opportunity for people to walk away with practical tools, practical things that they could take with them, which they could implement within their cities. And so with that in mind, it's such a privilege for me today to be able to just engage in a conversation with Lutango Labatsi. Lutango heads up the southern region of African enterprise across the African continent, as well as the hub leader for the southern the central component of Movement Day across the African continent. And so, Dr. Labatsi, it's been a wonderful opportunity over the last period of time to engage with you and just to know your passion, as well as some of the work that you've done at a local level in cities across our continent. And then Johan Olafir. Johan is the CEO of an organization by the name of Renaka. Renaka touches and looks at towns, cities, suburbs, and understands what are the issues in that city and then how best to transform that city. And it was interesting because Johan and I connected, first of all, as part of business a couple of years ago. And we connected with one of the large banks, and we were both doing work in that environment. And I got to experience firsthand in a specific small town just how transformation and a God-centered approach to transformation using real robust tools could apply. And so, Johan, it's been wonderful to be able to continue that relationship with you and for us to be able to talk today and to engage around this. I think sometimes we start off when we say, well, where do we start? You know, we're talking about transforming a city. Where do we start? What's going to have the greatest impact? Who are the people that should be involved? How do we engage with those people? And those are the sorts of questions that we find ourselves dealing with on an ongoing basis as we deal with city and town transformation. And I think that with that in mind, Labatsi, if I can just maybe hand straight over to you as part of the first question, really, to be able to understand in your perspective, where do we in fact start such processes?
Right. I just wanted to mention the fact that this work of is important, because we do need to be able to measure and quantify, what we are doing. Because if we don't, especially in the church, we tend to generalize everything. We've got a cliche of language, we are blessed and that kind of language, but it really doesn't mean a lot. So it's very, very important that we are able to quantify what we are doing. And that gives us a clearer picture of where we are and what needs to be done. And quite frankly, in 2001, I had a privilege. I was appointed to work with World Vision in a town called Mpika in the northern part of our country. And I joined the Pentecostal church, and about a year later, the pastor asked me to be part of his eldership team. And our church then, it was called Mpika Central, had a vision called Mpika for Jesus, and it was divided into a number of zones. So when I was invited to join the eldership, I was given Zone C. And you need to appreciate that Zone C was a zone which was highly praised and recommended by church members as the most prayerful, when it came to evangelism, we were the ones that were doing it in Mpika. And so when I took over leadership, I decided to do a little bit of a research in Zone C. So I was staying with some young men, and I asked them, using just a piece of paper, an A4 paper, and I said, I would like you to go around our zone and map up our zone, every street, every home, and whatever else is in our zone. So a few days later, they brought the map to me, done with a hand, and I blew it up on an A5 paper for the flip chart and stuck it on the wall, basically enlarged the same, and I called a meeting. And I asked them to do just one thing, and I said, in the past year, we've been involved in evangelism, and I want you to mark every house that we have reached. And what was interesting and what was our finding was that we had 200 houses in that Zone C, and probably 1,200 people within Zone C. And then when I asked them this question, could you just mark with a marker the houses that we've reached? I mentioned that we had 200 houses. We only managed to mark about 10 houses out of 200. And this is what we're being praised for. We had done a good job. And so when I turned to the group and I said, guys, are we doing that well? Suddenly they realized that we were not doing very well at all. And so I posed another question. So what do we need to do then? Then they said together, collectively, we need to attempt to reach every household, 200 houses. And I think that's what quantifying, when you do research and you're able to quantify what, it will inform, even what you're supposed to do. Maybe I can leave it there for now.
Thank you so much, Lutanga. So the essence of that is we have this perception that we might be doing fine and so on, but we need to get a solid base, a solid foundation in terms of saying, well, what are we working from to be able to know where we're going to? So Johan, on that note, really, when you think of outcomes, basically what outcomes would we want to achieve as part of this process?
Stephen, let me just start first. I am an urban planner, so it's so exciting to be here. I've worked with cities, streets, communities the last 30 years, really trying to the Ranyaka mean to pursue is to first pursue God, because the solution is there, but also to pursue the solution with people and the agencies that we've got. So what Robert said, it's so spot on. The things that we measure, the outcomes, is of course the economy, but finding first a baseline and then say, but what's the new economy? And how do we work towards that? The second one, I think a gentleman in the Kenya video said about quality spaces. If we cannot sit somewhere safe to discuss all the stuff that we want to do, it's very difficult. And quality, dirty, unsafe spaces, people don't invest in that. So that's a second one that we work quite hard to. The third one is really how well do we care for people. And sometimes we're very busy with the soup kitchens and all, but we don't look back and say, but do we really care? Their physical, their spiritual, their mental health is a huge issue at the moment. And the fourth thing that we pursue to understand is, can we work together? And those four things is outcomes, very spiritual also. Our stewardship, the economy, the space, the people, and unity. That's a biblical thing. If we don't have it, we're not going to get where we want to be. And I think that's the outcomes at the moment that we're really pursuing. And I think we're close to 30 communities across South Africa at the moment, so we learn every day. And I think that's what research is. We learn every day. And we follow Nehemiah for the outcomes. Pray, plan, build. Pray, plan, build. It's a nice rhythm that you need to start to get in place.
Yeah, I think sitting to a great expert here, I just wanted to say that sometimes when we talk about research, it can be very intimidating because it can also be very, very technical. And as a result, whenever we think about research, we do really get intimidated. We don't even know where to start. And I think that's one of the questions that you asked. And I think giving the example that I gave you, is we don't always have to be that technical. And what we had was a simple piece of paper, A4 paper, and perhaps some pens, and we're able to draw something. And so in that light, we need to be able to use what we have. And as a development practitioner, I'm aware that sometimes you go into a community, you involve the community, and you do your drawings on the ground. The community will know where the schools are, what is available, and that will be able to inform, so we can start it from as basic as that. It doesn't have to be very academic and very, very technical, if I may put it that way.
Let's pick up on that point, Johan. I mean, we think of the story of Moses, where God said to him, what's in your hand? And he said, well, there's a rod in my hand. And what did God say? God said, well, put it in the water. And that's when we find, transformation.
Yeah, and I think that's the balance that we need to get, because you need both.
Yeah.
There's some stuff communities don't know, we don't know. So you need both, very technical, academic at some stage, and then you need to go down to the community and say, what is it meaning for you? Because sometimes we do a lot of things, and then we stand back, we say, sure, we actually have done nothing. So if there's at least some framework, there's 4 things that I've mentioned that we know this is what we're pursuing, in whatever way and what we have, we can at least a year look back and say, but have we achieved some of these things? And that's why we measure quite often with communities. And it's actually amazing. I always joke, we've got 93 indicators. When I give it to a funder, they say, Johan, it's too much. But if I give it to a community, that's their life. That's the stuff they experience every day. So they're not scared about these things. And they love paper. We love paper. Paper don't intimidate anybody. But it just creates such a nice framework for dialogue also, because your ego is out of that discussion. Because you know what you want to discuss. You know where you want to move. So yes, use what you have, but have a framework, because it also places people in terms of what they need to do. Who do you involve? As soon as that framework is there, it's easy to start to map where's the church's place, where's the business place. And that makes a lot of sense, because people understand where they fit. And that's clarity. And we've just seen powerful. If people are clear about things, sure, they will use what they have and they will run. So that's not just in terms of that,
Yeah, and I think, Stephen, the importance, especially if you're at a lower level and you're involving the community, the church, and they're able to participate in the process, it does generate a sense of ownership, and when you have done that, it begins to transform your life, because suddenly, like you rightly said, Johan, there's a clarity, things are not maybe as well as we thought they were, and then it's also easy for us to determine which direction we should be able to, to take as a result.
And just on that simplicity, Steve, again, if we know what we want to do, it's easy to get to a simplicity. Because we need to understand we're dealing with deep-rooted, difficult things. Poverty, crime, substance abuse, that you don't solve in a day. So if you have a simple process to do that, it's amazing how that process starts to build and people go deeper and they understand more, and they start to realize it's a confidence actually that you build up in a community to do their research, to do their understanding. And we've seen it in our community. Sure, at some stage you need to keep people back. Because the worst thing that we can do is everybody is now busy and it's so dear mekaar that we actually don't know where we're going. And again, that's where the framework co-created with a community really, really helps. And then you can find the solutions of a new economy. Getting your spaces at quality space, Sorry, I'm just it's so exciting to be here. It's such an exciting topic. And I think God is a town planner, really.
Yeah, that's wonderful to see how God uses those spaces with people, putting people together. Just talk a little bit maybe about, you've spoken about the simplicity of the process at the end of the day. It seems to me that the whole role is to pull people together around the issues that matter to that community. Because that's the other thing, isn't it? What actually is important? Where do we start here from that perspective? Maybe you want to talk to that a bit?
Yeah, and I think, Stephen, it's really what's important for them, but sometimes you need to bring stuff from outside. If you want a better way to feed people, there's sometimes solutions outside that we can bring in. Of course, community need to understand that. You don't want to just dump things in that. But I think that's, again, the simplicity of the process. If you've got that process, it's easy to start to plug these things in. Because you can see what's the application, the implication of what you bring in. And as Robert said, the agency of communities is our biggest power through the Holy Spirit. Sure, that if we can just do that and replicate that, that's why we work on a very standard way also. Because it will be great to measure the mapping that you've done in 40 other places. Then you start to build up a bit of a standard, a bit of a guideline, and then you can really start to change. To build cities takes enormous, your mind, your heart, your soul. As what in the Bible says, we have to put in everything. But it's such an exciting pursuit. It's such an exciting pursuit to practically see where God is busy through our efforts to really change and bring a new prosperity for how we discussed it. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe as part of that then, and I'm thinking here about the different contexts. So again, you're both in very different environments. I'm in a different environment in that sense. But we are together realizing that we need each other to get a system to change. We need business, we need government, we need the NGO sector, absolutely the church to pull together around these elements. Maybe just some practical thoughts around that?
Yeah, I think that's another important aspect, because when you do a research like that, you're not just going to do it alone. You want to bring in the different stakeholders, like you said, the church could be involved, NGOs, etc., especially if it's at a citywide or even a community. And when you do that, there's a sense in which it also brings you together. These are common problems that you face as a community, as a city. And then you begin to ask the question, what can we do together to make a difference? I think that's part of what we've been even learning from this morning's message. Yeah.
Yeah, Stephen, I think because currently we work with traditional leaders, small towns like Darling, and then in the cities itself. And the framework, actually, there's common contact points. There's common things all of us want. And again, that's if you've got the framework and you can sit with a traditional leader, there's something in the back of your mind that leads your discussion. And that's what's really helping across these different type of settlements that we plan for and that we work with. Safety is everywhere an issue at the moment. It is everywhere, deep rural, in the city. And we need to work hard to sort of get a solution for that, for example.
Johan, I was remembering the one town that we first connected, and I was absolutely amazed by the amount of effort it took to create that foundation of relationship and so on, and then how much effort had to go into actually maintaining that, facilitating sessions, pulling the community together. But what a wonderful opportunity for the church to be the catalyst of pulling those various parties together, be almost the enabler of that process, would you say?
Yeah, and I think the first thing that you normally do is we plan and we build a specific territory. And territory is where God's fingerprints are. And as soon as you start to push into that territory, that's the old world, the stuff we don't want, there's a lot of pushback. Not only mentally, spiritually also. So the church plays an enormous role. It's nearly like logistics for an army. Because you get pushback every day. Because you take back territory, economic territory, you take back your spiritual territory. And that's why I'm saying it's not an easy task. Magaliesburg is now our 7th year. The fraternal, it's still there. They still pray. It isn't heaven yet. But it takes time. And the roots go deeper every time. God, it's amazing. He doesn't take you so deep that you feel, whoa, it's uncomfortable. He just gives you enough that you want to pursue the next thing. And that's so amazing of building cities and building communities and villages, and streets.
I think, Steve, you mentioned a very important point when you're talking about the church providing leadership. I think what we do, especially as Movement Day, gives us that opportunity, for the church to be able to provide leadership. Because sometimes in the governance issues, in the politics, sometimes even the politicians want to, marginalize the church. Like they have no relevance to what is happening, because you should be thinking about heaven and so on. But this kind of approach does give us an opportunity to be on the ground and also to be able to provide leadership on some of the many difficult, stubborn realities of our cities and of our communities. And I think when the church steps out like that, the people themselves will start wondering. And then we can also be able to present Christ in that process, and give spiritual answers as well as social answers to some of the questions that are being raised. Yeah.
Oh, that's excellent. Thank you for that. I mean, that makes it really practical. So maybe we should just summarize in a way. Johan, you've spoken about those 4 foundation pillars. Please, can you repeat them? Because that becomes the basis upon which you will enter in an environment, correct?
Yeah, and I think it's very close to, Robert, what you also said. We need a new economy. We need quality places where people can really be safe and discuss things. We need to care better in terms of people's mental, physical, spiritual health. And the 4th one is we need to be united and work together. And that basically leads all your measurements that you can work from.
And then, Lutanga, the point that you just made now, the opportunity for the church to move into almost a leadership role and a facilitating role as part of these issues is a real opportunity.
It definitely is. I put it as simple as if somebody starts throwing garbage in a certain space, the community gets the cue, that's the place to throw the garbage. And sooner than later, it becomes a garbage heap. If you decide to do the opposite, and as a church, to say we're not just going to tiptoe our way all the way to heaven because we think we are foreigners and pilgrims on the earth, but we're going to do something about the environment, and you move in there and begin to work on that garbage and clear it, the other community members will get the cue, and they'll start wanting to do the same thing, that we can live in a better environment. And I think that's where the opportunity comes in for the church, to provide that leadership in that sense.
Oh, thank you so much. That's excellent. Thank you for that. Those are really helpful tools. And again, as I think of the day, we're going to walk out of the day with a toolbox. You've given us some great tools. Please also bear in mind that if you look at the Renaka, RENYAKA website, these tools are available to us to use. And Johan would encourage us to be using them across the cities, across the African continent. The other point to bear in mind is that we as Movement Day Africa conducted research in terms of 11 cities across the continent, having a look at what are those issues which are intractable, which those cities in fact face. That research is available to you as well on the Movement Day Africa website. There's a summary report and a deep report that was done by an independent consulting company. Please feel free to use that, because that also, for your city, gives you a sense as to what the real issues are that you need to focus on. Good. The next step is that we as tables will be picking up and discussing 2 key questions, if we can bring those up. Here they are. So as a table, if you could just talk to these 2 questions, which really are, what are the main takeouts that you've got from this discussion? And then opportunities and challenges. And really from your perspective, and this is really important, what are those next steps in your mind that you're going to take in terms of making this a reality? Thank you.